She lived on the edge of the village. She made herbal teas for the sick, delivered babies, and maybe even spoke to the wind like it was her friend. One day, they called her a witch and set her on fire. My cat being in the video was not planned. It is what it is. It happened naturally. Let's get going. Sonny, you're making this video. There was a time when a woman could pull a baby from the veil of death with her bare hands. A time when she spoke to the earth, healed with her hands, and people came to her for everything from a fever to a broken heart. And then we called her a witch. Today we're talking about the wise woman, the healer, the midwife, the one who knew things. And more importantly, we're talking about why she was pushed aside, feared, and nearly forgotten. Because this isn't about men or blaming them. This is about honoring femininity and the power we were taught to fear. So, who was this wise woman? She wasn't one person. She was an archetype. Who is she? The crone, the midwife, the healer, the intuitive. In mythology, she's often the guide, the keeper of secrets, the woman past childbearing age who speaks inconvenient truth. In real life, herbalists, midwives, doulas, older women in communities who held power without needing permission. She shows up in every culture, sometimes as a healer, sometimes as a prophet, sometimes as a terrifying old lady in the woods. You know, the one that you're told not to talk to. In Slavic folklore, she's the Baba Yaga. In Celtic tradition, she's the Kellic. In Italian tradition, she's the Befana. In fairy tales, she's the crone, the less marketable cousin of the fairy godmother. But these women weren't just old and wrinkly and mysterious. They held power, real power. They were midwives, herbalists, spiritual guides. They preserved generational knowledge. When to harvest mugwort, how to bring down a fever, how to read a birth chart before the baby is born, and they weren't scary until society decided they were. So let's talk about one of the most literal forms of feminine power, bringing life into the world. For most of human history, midwives, women, handled childbirth. The women who brought life into the world weren't just healthcare providers. They were community healers, herbalists, storykeepers, guardians of birth, death, and everything sacred in between. They knew the rhythms of labor. They knew how to turn a breech baby with their hands. They stayed with you through the night. They didn't have degrees, but they had experience. They were midwives. And at some point, their power began to challenge the existing authority. Midwives weren't just catching babies. They carried generation of practical wisdom. They knew which herbs eased labor, how to stop a hemorrhage, how to comfort a grieving mother. In many towns and villages, they were the only medical help people ever had. But they didn't wear uniforms. They didn't speak Latin. They didn't learn the rules from a textbook. And they also didn't follow written rules. As science advanced, especially in Europe and later in America, a shift happened. Medicine became more formal, more institutionalized, and more centralized. The new systems of healthcare were dominated by men, trained in universities, backed by new laws and licenses. And with it, midwives were pushed to the side in favor of male doctors. Suddenly, birth was no longer something sacred and intuitive. It became something clinical, something that had to happen on a table under bright lights with metal tools. The old ways, they were seen as outdated, unscientific, even dangerous. And guess what happened? Women started dying. Hospitals that, despite all their tools and their knowledge, often had higher maternal death rates than those attended by midwives, especially from infections like puerperal fever. All because the medical establishment at the time refused to adopt one simple practice: washing their hands between autopsies and birth. Yes, really, in the 19th century, puerperal fever, also known as childbed fever, was killing mothers in hospitals. Just the thought of it makes me angry, not just for the woman in question, but for the children that lost their mother. And when a guy named Ignaz Semmelweis, a doctor, Semmelweis, suggested that maybe doctors should adopt one simple practice, stopped going from autopsies to deliveries, and maybe just washed their hands in between. Well, the medical establishment laughed him out of the profession. He even ended up in an insane asylum. They thought it was absurd to think that they were the ones causing women to die. Enraging. Midwives, meanwhile, were not killing their patients, but they were losing their reputation, their livelihoods, and in some cases, their freedom. Some were even accused of witchcraft. But the suspicion towards midwives started long before modern medicine. Take Agnes Sampson, a midwife and a healer in 16th century Scotland. She was known for helping women through birth, offering herbal remedies, and providing spiritual counsel. In other words, she was a classic wise woman until she wasn't. When a paranoid king needed a scapegoat for a storm at sea, Agnes was accused of witchcraft. They said she summoned storms, that she used herbs to do harm, that she had an unnatural power. Tortured, shamed, and publicly humiliated, she confessed to things that made no sense. Ultimately, she was burned at the stake. She was executed, not because she did harm, but because she held too much feminine knowledge that could not be understood by the powers that were. Her story is just one of many. Across Europe, midwives were more likely to be accused of witchcraft than most other women, and those accused of witchcraft oftentimes did not escape the charges. They were accused not because they were evil, but because they held a kind of knowledge and independence that didn't fit the growing systems of control and order. They were harder to regulate, harder to silence, and that made them dangerous. So, was she a threat? And I don't mean specifically Agnes, but the healer, the midwife, the wise old woman. Maybe because her knowledge didn't fit neatly into the rational, male-dominated framework of the time, because she didn't need permission to speak, or to act, or to heal. Because she was old and no longer beautiful to look at. All of the above, maybe? The wise woman challenged the hierarchy. She operated outside of institutions. Her knowledge came from observation and intuition, not textbooks, and that made her dangerous. Not because she was wrong, but because she was independent of all of these externalities. Intuition is not something that you can get a degree on or even measure. Feminine knowledge has always been seen as suspicious. Emotions, irrational. Intuition, unreliable. Healing, pseudoscience. If it doesn't look like a scalpel or a spreadsheet, it's not taken seriously. But here's the truth. Different doesn't mean inferior. So what now? Today, I think there's a quiet return of the wise woman. Midwifery is back. Herbalism is being rediscovered. Doulas are growing in popularity. In fact, I took a doula's birth course before having my daughter, but there's still resistance. We still call intuition woo. We still call women emotional when they're right. We still shame mothers for wanting a birth experience that isn't cold and clinical. Even the freaking Surgeon General of the US is being called woo for thinking outside of the established norms. Reclaiming this power doesn't mean rejecting modern medicine. It means asking, what did we lose when we stopped trusting women? But maybe something ancient is stirring again. The return of a figure that was buried under centuries of suspicion, silenced by fire or force, but never truly gone. The wise woman is reawakening. Today she reappears in many forms. Sometimes she's your local herbalist, growing lavender in her backyard. Sometimes she's a birth educator. The doula, the woman who tells you your body knows what to do. Sometimes she's online, teaching you how to make bone broth, how to make sourdough, how to listen to your cycle, and how to say no. She might not wear a cloak or carry a staff, but make no mistake, she's coming back. In a world that constantly rewards productivity over intuition and speed over stillness, the return of the wise woman is almost an act of rebellion. She reminds us that softness is strength, that knowledge passed from woman to woman through stories, through rituals, through blood is still valid, still sacred, and still feared. Because a woman who knows her power is a dangerous thing, not because she wants to dominate, but because she refuses to be dominated. You can see the echoes of all suspicion. Women who choose natural birth are still called reckless. Women who question medical dogma are labeled hysterical, crazy, or anti-you-know-what. And by the way, this is not just men doing that. Both men and women do this to other women. Especially those that are not in touch with their own intuition. Those that have a hard time trusting themselves. Women who teach others how to listen to their bodies and intuition are accused of being anti-science. Different tools, same tactics. But here's the twist. They're not hiding anymore. The wise woman wasn't dangerous because she was ignorant. She was dangerous because she knew and because she shared. And they didn't know where this knowledge was coming from. How did she know? That could not be explained. It's time we stop being afraid of that kind of power. In trying to escape centuries of dismissal, feminists made a crucial mistake. They tried to prove that we could be just like men, often by downplaying the feminine entirely, feminine wisdom, even trying to stamp it out, almost like they were ashamed of it. Because we can't be like men, and we shouldn't be. Men are men, and women are women. Feminine is powerful in its own way, and it's time we remember that.